We're taught that the world we live in is this beautiful and incredible place. While that is true, there are certain things out there that can be quite hazardous to our health. Sure, we know that we need to stay away from the scary-looking things, and we can create some creepy-looking things from our minds. But what about the most innocent-looking stuff? Well, you might need to do a double take because they might be even worse. Before we start, take a moment to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on those notifications. Hola! Did you hear about our latest addition to our family? TheRichest Espanol is the perfect place for all you native Spanish speakers out there. Don't speak Spanish? No problem. Come on over. This is the perfect place to practice. Amazing facts, interesting people, and funny pictures. Check out TheRichest Espanol today. Moths and butterflies. Moths and butterflies are some of the most beautiful insects that this world has ever seen. We often associate butterflies with innocence and, overall, a positive image. Moths are typically not harmful, though their larvae may be bad for your clothing. So when it comes to unassuming and unsuspecting things, moths and butterflies are the top of our list. Check out this adorable picture of a squeaking silk moth. Who wouldn't want to give this innocent-looking moth a little snuggle and a pinch of fairy dust? Well, if you're ever in a survival situation, you might be tempted to eat a butterfly or moth for some protein. Sure, Simba, Timon, and Pumbaa got by with eating bugs and singing in the jungle. However, as we know, Disney movies show us the more perfect side of life, where your favorite characters don't get sick from eating bugs. But if you eat a butterfly or moth, you might be consuming a poisonous insect. The monarch butterfly is known for eating poisonous plants for food, and that toxin stays inside the butterflies. So you might need a crash course in insect dieting habits before going Bear Grylls style on your next hiking trip. Water hemlock. The water hemlock looks pretty, but it's actually the most poisonous plant in North America as declared by the USDA. Sure, we might know of the poisonous hemlock that Socrates made famous, but you don't have to go to Europe to put yourself at risk to this dangerous plant. While it looks like an admirable replacement to baby's breath, you want to stay as far as you can from the water hemlock. You'd be safer standing at a distance and using a telescope to enjoy the view. If you're more of someone who wants to take a peek at the stems and the flower itself, you could be safe. But would you really want to take that kind of risk? In the stalks of the plant is a toxic sap known as convulsin cycutoxin. If you come into contact with this sap, you could have a grand mal seizure and see a white light heralding you to the other side. The scary thing about this plant is that it doesn't take a lot to get this severe reaction. So in short, if you see the water hemlock, turn the other way and run. Slow loris. While we're talking about plants and bugs, there are some adorable little animals that are also dangerous to your health. Wait, how can that be? Life isn't fair sometimes. The slow loris is the textbook definition of cute with its big eyes and cute button nose. But before you pull an Elmira Duff from Tiny Toons, take a moment to find out more about this adorably precious creature. For one, it's poisonous. How does that even work? Well, the slow loris secretes a poison through a gland in its elbows. It's actually one of the most lethal poisons on the planet. This compound is produced as a defense mechanism for their young. The loris will lick the poison from its elbows and lick it onto their young so that wild animals won't want to eat them. But if you threaten a slow loris, it will secrete the poison, lick it up, and then proceed to bite you. If you manage to get treated in time, you might have a chance for survival. Otherwise, run for your life. This is definitely a little creature that you don't want to mess with or even try to test its patience and bravery. Fairy bells. Fairy bells are considered to be one of the most attractive plants on this earth. But just because something might look really good, it doesn't mean that you should put it in your mouth. Yet these days, more and more people are eating whatever they want out in the wild, when they have no idea of the deadly consequences. There's a good reason why it earned its name, along with another title like foxglove and fairy thimbles. Doesn't that sound just so magical and sweet? Like, if you were to run into fairy bells on a hike, you might want to approach it to look for Tinkerbell, take a sniff, or even put it in your hair. Doesn't that sound just magnificent? Well, hold that thought. This plant also holds some pretty dark titles that we dare not mention here. The scientific name for the fairy bells plant is Digitalis purpurea, and it contains a poison known as cardiac glycoside digitoxin. If you eat a fairy bell, you'll experience nausea, convulsions, vomiting, and cardiac arrest. Yeah, you'd be seeing that white light really fast. So perhaps you might want to keep your distance and let Tinkerbell and her fellow woodland fairies have some privacy. Chokecherry. By a show of hands, who likes cherries? They're sweet and they're probably the world's favorite flavor. It's hard to find someone who doesn't enjoy cherries. We cover them in chocolate, we top them on our sundaes, and we pretty much find reasons to eat cherries as much as we can. So when we see cherries out in the wild, it would be reasonable to assume that the plant is safe to eat. In reality, if you run into the chokecherry, you're asking for a heap of trouble for your insides, and that's no joke. Wild cherries are commonly found in the forest, and keep in mind that not all cherries are created equal or safe. There are tiny, pretty flowers on the chokecherry, but that's where its beauty stops. The leaves and stems are filled with a poison called hydrocyanic acid, which will make you meet your maker at the pearly gates. Hydrocyanic acid affects the respiratory system, causes rapid breathing, and will make you feel like you're choking. Well, hey, it's like they named the cherry after what ailments it beholds for you. Narcissus. If you're unfamiliar with the narcissus plant, then you might know it better by its other name, the daffodil. Yup, the innocent-looking daffodil, while it may look unassuming, is actually a pretty poisonous plant. So before you go out to frolic in a field of daffodils, let's take a moment to learn more about this deadly flower. Socrates wrote about this plant, saying that when it was used on open wounds, it would cause numbness all over the body and paralysis to the heart. Yeah, that's pretty intense. While the leaves, stems, and roots are harmful, the highest concentration of the poison lies inside the bulb of the flower. In Toulouse in the early 1900s, the narcissus bulb was mistaken for an onion and consumed, causing widespread tragedy in the community. However, not everyone has heard of the deadly effects of the narcissus, as some cultures believe that it cures baldness and can even be used as a bedroom enhancer for couples that are looking for a good time. In short, don't even think about testing out this theory. Rosary Pea. If you happen to go on a hike in a tropical area, you might run into the rosary pea. Technically, this plant isn't harmful as long as it stays intact. Once the seeds are broken into pieces, that's when the plant's harmful poison takes effect. If you think eating the seeds will give you a free pass on life, think again. Those who have taken to chewing on rosary pea seeds find themselves with little life left to live. The seeds contain a poisonous protein known as abrin, and it only takes 3 micrograms to take down an adult. Interestingly enough, you will find rosary pea seeds being used for jewelry as well as Catholic rosaries. As you can imagine, that can be an invitation for a whole world of trouble, especially if you have a small baby or child that likes to randomly chew on stuff. If you find yourself accidentally consuming a seed, you're looking at organ failure in about 4 days. So it's safe to say that it simply isn't worth the risk, no matter how hungry you are while hiking in a tropical environment. Wolfsbane. Wolfsbane is pretty purple, and it would make sense that anyone would want to add it to a pretty bouquet of flowers. But if you want to come into contact with this plant, you'll need the equivalent of a hazmat suit. Also known as monk's hood, the wolfsbane is technically an unassuming plant, but that's how it gets you. This flower was actually once used by farmers to get rid of their local wolf population, and it nearly wiped out a species. Also known as its scientific name, aconitum, this flower has actually caused a lot of mayhem over time. In 2014, a gardener met his maker after tending a millionaire's estate and brushing up against a high amount of wolfsbane. Because the gardener was not wearing protective clothing while handling the flower, he met an untimely end. The flower's poison ended up causing the gardener multiple organ failure. Typically, most doctors wouldn't be able to pick up on the wolfsbane poison as a cause of passing, but the gardener's son did some detective work on his own and discovered the horrifying secret. Let's just say one can find themselves in an adaptation of Clue if the perpetrators used wolfsbane poison to get away with the perfect mischief-making. The devil's fingers. Okay, so when you hear that something is called the devil's fingers, it will logically inspire you to either stay away from it or you'll want to check it out in all its glory. In all honesty, this plant looks like it came from the imagination of Tim Burton or some other mystical land like what you'd find in the movie The Never-Ending Story. The only reason why someone may want to approach this plant is to get a better look. If you think about it, it does look like it could be from an alien planet, kind of like Little Shop of Horrors. But before you feed this plant your local dentist and sing duets, there might not be as much drama as you think. Luckily, this plant is more menacing looking than actually being dangerous towards us. This plant is typically a delicacy in other countries, and yet there have been a few reports of people getting dramatically sick after consuming it. So what is the truth? Well, considering that the plant is a woodland fungus that can be found in Britain, and it has sticky tissue to capture flies, this might not be on your list of bizarre things to try. Caterpillar. Before you ask, no, this isn't a picture of Donald Trump's hair gone rogue, so put down the phone and take a seat. This is actually a bug called a flannel moth caterpillar, and while it is cute, you definitely don't want to give this soft and cuddly creature a pet. The hairs on this caterpillar act like little needles, and while you may not feel them piercing your skin, that's what's happening, and it's really uncomfortable. The hairs all have little barbs on them that make them not only able to puncture the skin, but will also stay there to do more damage. The result is that you'll start feeling a burning sensation and get a lot of irritation. Imagine if one of the caterpillar's hairs blow into the air and land on another part of your skin, or worse, it could get into your eye. Well, in that case, you can make a joke that President Trump's hair caused you to go blind in one eye. Actually, the United States Commander-in-Chief may not appreciate the joke. This caterpillar is a lot smaller than you think, so think of it like a cute little toupee walking around the branches. And remember, look but don't touch. Thanks for watching! Did any of these unassuming things shock you? Let us know in the comments. And before you go, don't forget to check out all the new and exciting content over at TheRichest Espanol. Adios!